listening to Resilient and Rowdy. I'm your host, Jess James. Tune in to hear unfiltered discussions and stories of the bold and the brave. So kick back and enjoy some R&R. Hi, welcome back to the R&R podcast. This is your host, Jess, and today I have a returning guest, Jason. He is an expert of many things, and we're poking his brain today. So, Jason, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jess. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for just coming on again. I'm really excited to dig into some things today.
You know what, fellow podcaster? This podcasting thing it's so much. I think it's better to get actual information out there. Now, I may not be an expert on everything, but I try to kind of niche down and find what I'm good at and talking. And one of the things I really want to talk about today is just getting information out there. And you said your demographics were like a lot of parents and people in their 20s, 30s, starting a family, are just themselves that could actually be in these type of environments where they need to be kind of aware of what's going on. So I appreciate you giving me time and an audience to share some ideas.
Yeah, of course. I feel like you are constantly working and, staying up to date on a lot of facts and, safety tips and privacy tips. So I had to ask the expert himself. So yeah, let's get into it.
Expert here. Let's talk. One thing I've been really focusing on lately is like predators, people who are targeting children, whether that's trafficking or whether that it's actual, people targeting for sexual abuse, for pedophilia or anything else. And because I'm very passionate about that topic, because I am a dad myself. I have a 11 and a 13-year-old. And as they mature, I start thinking, I'm like, there are people looking at them in ways that I don't, for one, feel comfortable. And two, they're out there trying to look at girls and boys just like them. And the big thing is you probably saw all that about the Olympic team for years were abused by the Nasser.
Yeah.
And this was a doctor who had direct contact. And the girls, they were made to feel like, hey, this is, if it's happening to everybody else, is it bad? I mean, this guy was violating them. And so many hundreds of girls and everywhere. And when they arrested them, they found child pornography and all sorts of other stuff. So what the thing is that these predators and stuff, there are no demographic. There's no, okay, that white male over there who's, beady eyed, he's the one doing it. No, it's everyone. And they're all over the place.
Yeah. They have very self-serving needs. So, whether it doesn't raise like an eyebrow to you, it's worth taking a second look at, because most people do not have that perspective, do not have that way of thinking that's pretty, ill. So for a parent, you might just think, oh, it's innocent. I'm posting a picture of my children at the park on Instagram and I tag the location. That could be incredibly dangerous and it's putting you in a very vulnerable state. If anything, I would just post that a couple hours after you leave the park, something like that. But yeah, it's crazy how it might not seem like anything to us, but
and that's the thing about social media is I stopped posting pictures, like even on my regular Facebook about my family, is because I have a social presence. I have a media presence. But then I've actually, I've been in law enforcement for 20 something years now, and I teach law enforcement and I do a lot of consulting on the side with it. But I also keep in contact with the people that are working this stuff. And I'm like, understanding what's going on out there. And it's there is, I believe there is this cross between like sex trafficking and pedophilia and predators, because a lot of the trafficking out there is teens, it's young girls. And a lot of these same people who are predators are buying them. And when I say predators, and I was trying to say demographics, is like, one of my cop friends is like, yeah, I wanted to tell you about a case where you arrested a firefighter. And the firefighter is like the pillar of the community, and he's out there. You have pastors, you have police officers, you have federal agents, you have familial relations that are out there. praying, and it's a very sick subculture, and it's evil. I mean, imagine being, a teen, or even younger than teens, and you're getting abused and abused and abused. How do you move on with your life? And I'm going to bring up the Olympics because, seeing those girls have the courage to get up in front of Congress and talk the way they did, their life is so damaged now that they need help, and they're reaching out to get help. And I did say I've been in law enforcement for 20 something years,
Mhm.
and those girls reached out. They reached out to the FBI, and it fell on deaf ears. And my backstory about when shit falls on deaf ears, it pisses me off, and especially when law enforcement drops the ball. And they went beyond dropping the ball. The actual FBI supervisor that they provided that information with got offered a job with the Olympic Committee for, and so they were essentially paying him off by not looking into these allegations. And there has to be some sort of place where these kids, teens, boys, girls, women, victims can reach out to for a safe haven. A lot of times when law enforcement encounters a prostitute, or at least back in the day, and that's what we're really trying to change the education on this. Anybody who sells, and let me backtrack, anybody who sells themselves or is sold that's under the age of 18 is not doing it legally. So I don't, someone is using them to sell their body. So if you're purchasing sex from a teen, it's not legal. I'm saying under 18. And even so, that right there is illegal. So a lot of times when police encountered minor prostitutes, they would treat them like a prostitute, a sex worker, not knowing and not pushing beyond that encounter and beyond that arrest that maybe they're not here willingly. Maybe someone is using them for sex, and not just sex, but for money.
Mhm.
Because these guys they have a stables of 3 or 4 or 5 girls, and they're just selling them over and over. And
Mhm.
then when they're done using them, they'll go on and get more.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is like, and then the people. So that also comes up to the Johns. That without demand, there will be no supply. So these guys out there, and I'm going to say guys because 99% of the time it's guys that are purchasing the sex, have got to stop using prostitutes. And uh, yes, there are places for sex workers. We all know that, and it's a tough line to cross between legalized prostitution and prostitutes that are on the street and being used by pimps. So these men have got to stop using prostitutes. They have to start looking at these as human beings.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that last part especially. I feel like a lot of Johns or yeah, a lot of Johns just see as sexual intercourse as something that you do to a woman, not with a woman, and there's that objectification. And also, as for the survivors that came forward with the Olympic trials, yeah, I absolutely do applaud them. They are incredibly brave, and I can really understand why living their life comfortably now is very difficult because we're taught and we teach the women, the people around us, the children, hey, like don't let a stranger do this. Don't it's that keyword stranger or acquaintance because normally it's someone that that ends up assaulting someone, whether it's a child, woman, or exploiting them. It's, I mean, I don't know, it's just intentional, but I think that's like the biggest statement and fact that is kind of like brushed off again, just saying
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be a stranger. It's someone that you work with. It's someone that you see constantly or frequently, and they develop that relationship, or they understand, or watch your routine or your life, and they somehow place themselves in it for their disgusting intentions. So But again, that red flag is just, it's going to be someone, and we need to be teaching that to everyone, period. Cause that's what's happening. Like I'm seeing it in the news. Like it's not going to be a strange, not always, but in certain situations, it's usually someone close to you or someone maybe you have seen before in passing. Maybe.
Well, that bothers me. You know, when we talk about the teachers, they always show this like, this femme fatale teacher who seduces a teen boy, and people are like, "Oh, it's good for him," but no, it's not. I don't want some 30-year-old or 20-year-old or whatever uh, going coming on to my son who's
Yeah.
13. It's like that's bullshit. It's rape. It's
Yeah.
child molestation, and
Yeah.
that's the other thing too. Is like it's not right. Your moral compass can't go one or two ways. It's got to be on track, boy or girl, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep your hands off.
Right. And again, it's just breaking that boundary. It's someone that you trust to be in the care of children, to watch out for the well-being of everybody, an adult, period. An adult knows better. A child does not. Um, so yeah, whether it's a boy student or a female student, it's still someone being taken advantage of. And that shouldn't be taken lightly, but I'm seeing just so many light sentences
Hmm.
or no punishment. So that's where it really ruffles up feathers. It's like we have to do something to stop this cycle. So we're talking about it. We're trying to prevent it. I'm really really thankful to see so many survivors come forward and blossom through their lives as well. But open up that dialogue of like, hey, this happened to me. This is what they're doing. And then for other people who haven't been through that, it's just like, all right, we hear you. Let's do some new things so that these tactics don't work anymore, so that we can keep people safe.
You
Um,
brought up a great words right there. We hear you, and that's what I was trying to get with law enforcement. Is we need to train law enforcement to see victims, to
mhm,
see them there. And I think we talked about this last show. Is the vigilante techniques don't work.
mhm,
You, me could see someone who we think's a victim, try to go and snatch them up. They're going to end up right back in the hands of the bad guy. The thing is we delve into victims, and I do a lot of work with this organization. Not work, I actually ping them for a lot of information for Deliver Fund, and they always talk about victims. Victims turn to survivors, survivors turn to thrivers. So the
mhm,
thing is being able to get them out of the life. And a lot of that's where community comes in. I don't, I shit, I've been in the government for too long. I'm kind of jaded. I don't believe that there's a government solution for everything. And I think a lot of the solutions are at the grassroots level. It
mhm,
doesn't necessarily have to be like this bona fide, nonprofit, non-governmental organization, but we need places for these victims to be able to go, a safe haven to get them a foothold back into life where they can become a survivor and where they can become a thriver. Uh, Nobody, I've talked to a lot of survivors lately, and a lot of it comes down to like they get very empowered, but they need that first help up.
mhm,
They'll use it, and I shouldn't say they need it. A lot of them get it, they use it, and they move on, and they become such a survivor and such a thriver that they want to help others. And they're kind of the ones I always encounter because of the forward facing
mhm,
survivor. But we do need to have the messaging out there that we need to build that type of infrastructure where we can get these victims out of there.
mhm,
One thing I did want to touch on today was parents and, family and having kids, social media. And the more I hear from these traffickers themselves, and let's, dispel the rumor and the myth that there's a guy running around driving a van and he's going to grab your kid and kidnap him and put him in a Connex box and send him overseas. If anything, the kidnappers are different. They're not traffickers. They're predators and they're kidnapping your child. And that does happen, yes. But for the trafficking aspect of it, 9 times out of 10, from what I hear from the actual traffickers, whether they're reformed or arrested or whatever from the interviews, is that they are looking online, scrubbing social media, looking for disenfranchised children, children who are looking for something, whether that's emotional support, and then they're playing a long game. They ping them on a DM saying, "Oh, you look really sad today. Anything I could do?" Or, "Hey, you look great." Or, "Hey, this, hey, that." And they're sliding into their DMs and they're playing a long game. And they have the time. They could be trying to work 3 or 4 victims at a time. Then they pull them into this world. And the next thing you know, they're giving them, they're pushing them against their parents. They're providing them with emotional support.
Mhm.
They're providing them with money initially, cell phones, anything they want to get them into their life to where they feel like they owe this person something, where they owe servitude to them.
Mm.
And then, I've heard from victims who've said, they it's sick to think about it, but they'll take these teens, bring them in to run trains on them, get them broken, take videos of it, and then blackmail them into the life. And then the next thing you know, they're branding them, they're selling them, and are using them over and over again, providing them with drugs, anything to keep them in that life. And it's a reality. So the thing is, have these difficult conversations. Like I was telling you, like when I went to pick up my son today at school, he wasn't there. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm running around like a freak. And I'm a 20 something year law enforcement, ex infantry, whatever. And I'm like, what are my next steps? Did someone get a hold of him?
Mhm.
Did Has he been slumming in his DMs or what's going on? Turns out he was like with his friends after school and he had no cell service.
Mhm.
But I checked my Find My Phone app, nothing's on there. He didn't call. There's no messages, and like the I was like, you know what? The first thing I did was I talked to him and I said, hey, you know what? You cannot do that. You can't just go off. Keep contact of where your kids are at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, especially from that last tactic, for continuing the cycle of trafficking girls. That's absolutely awful. And for a law enforcement official to somehow still degrade that victim, that survivor, of thinking that she willingly wants that is just disgusting. Because, I mean, all right, I'm 27. I used to be a child. I remember those feelings. I had crushes back then. I wanted to kiss boys, but never beyond my imagination did I ever think that that is on the table. No, a 15-year-old, a child does not
Hmm.
want that. And yeah, there's a couple of things that do continue to exploit young women into pornography at a very particular young age. And 18, 19, no, still a child. Like that
Yes.
should not be a thing either. But absolutely, these people are still people. They're human. They just need, like you said, that little push. So have you come across any organizations that do stuff like that, or is it a matter of the people speaking up and asking for help?
There are organizations out there, like I said before, I talk a lot with the Liver Fund, but I'm finding a lot more organizations
Mhm.
as I do more speeches and I do this and I do that. A lot of it's localized, so you have to find out locally. And I think there really needs a repository of like, okay, all over the country. Okay, if you're living here, you can go here.
Mhm.
So, and I think the police should actually have a lot of, that's one thing you should work with the police is like, hey, look, if you think you're going to encounter victims and stuff, maybe you don't say, hey, you can come to us. But
Mhm.
a lot of times they don't feel comfortable, but hey, you can go to this place,
Mhm.
whether that's like a church organization or if it's like some sort of nonprofit or some sort of non-governmental or just something that's out there at the grassroots level. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be this big nationwide program where, you get lost in a shuffle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your emphasis on that because, that's where it starts. That's where those big organizations and ideas start, is just that conversation. But if we can see our power as a community, as a whole, as a society, and we can really get that ball rolling to really start making some more change. Because, I mean, in a weird way, sorry, I'm not sure if if you'll follow, but like with Texas trying to ban abortions and no remorse or no considerations for incest and rape. I just see it as like women are losing their body autonomy, and we're not necessarily like we're never, I feel like we're not ever going to be equal, but it felt more of like they only care about the statistics coming from all of the forced births, basically. Like you see it as another generation of a working class. You don't see how it hurts the person who wants an abortion, that and children, incest, rape. Like, how are you just going to completely like,
Hmm.
like, what
I
is wrong
just,
with you?
well,
So
there's such a lack of, I'm not going to get into the abortion debate, but let's
yeah,
get into the political debate of the people in charge, the people at all these organizations and government and everything are so out of touch with reality.
yeah,
It
yeah,
just, I mean, you and I were talking about that before. I ran into some former generals the other day at some event I went, and I'm like, these men are so out of touch with, and they were probably the same way when they were still active duty, out of touch with what's going on the
yeah,
ground.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, you know, if we even just delve into the topic of sexual assault, men and women,
Mhm.
and I say that because it happens on military bases. It's like, Jesus Christ. If you know what, man, uh I just, there's so much going on with people, and there's this just abusing other people, and just the humanity out there is just, it's, people are like, it's always been there, but I think with the social media and with being able to talk about it in open forums like this, we're actually saying, you know what, this is happening, and that's a good thing. I think I commend you for starting a podcast, because and talking about real topics, because without podcasts, what do you have? News.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, in the news, we're not getting a full picture
Real
out of that.
Yeah, it can have their own bias and their own, whatever. Yeah, but and even, personally, I'm sure I could put my own bias into stuff like
Yeah,
that.
of
But no, just
course.
having these real discussions, because I'm tired of tiptoeing around it, and I'm so tired of not seeing any tangible change. Like,
Change,
it's
actual
almost like it's
change.
intentional. And especially with this, like, I really want to empower survivors to not be in that state of fear anymore,
Uh-huh.
but to really channel that rage, that energy, that anger, and the lack of justice that we're seeing. I mean,
Yeah.
I just want to see more women conceal carry. I want to see them fight back, whether it's
Mhm.
verbally or just like just something. And so if I could have these conversations, if I can, call people out on Instagram, like, I will. I'm just really tired of it. And I've been a survivor of, a multitude of things. So it's just like, something's got to give, something's got to change, something has to happen, because it just keeps happening. So
It does. And you know what? Like I said, it's a ripple effect. You know, maybe one conversation. So you bring up the word trafficking, and so many people get impassioned with it. They're like, "Oh, we need to fucking do something about that." Well, do it.
right.
Do it. Hey, you know what? I started writing my congressman all the time. They're probably going to hate me. I don't give a shit. I
Yeah.
started getting a hold of the state ones now, saying, "Hey, what's your plan?
Hmm.
Call them up. They work for us. That's
Yeah,
what
and
people.
that's kind
They
of what people
absolutely
forget.
work for us."
Yeah, that's what people forget for sure. And so
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I'm going to hold this dude accountable. You get a very nice salary. What do you do with your days? Like, what's
Hmm.
on the agenda? When is this going to happen? Let's have a meeting on this. Let's gather the town and, have a discussion,
Yeah.
something. Um,
And work together. Stop this bullshit. You know, this partisan politics where we can't get anything done.
mhm,
Who can't get behind counter trafficking? Who
yeah,
can't get behind stopping these child predators out there?
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you know, and have resources available for the parents.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, I get it. Parents, they don't want to think that. They don't want to think that of people in their community. And, I'm a nanny, so I'm very protective. And I'm just like,
Yeah,
who
but
is
you
the
know,
person that
most
keeps
people
walking
most
that?
people live in a bubble.
Yeah, they do. And so, like, I definitely have to, like, keep myself very self aware. And, if that means, I don't know, just taking extra circumstances to make sure that myself and these children are going to be safe, and that, everything's going to go well and smoothly until pickup time, I'll do it. But I'm not sure why I'm seeing a lot of pushback from young parents that they don't want to talk about it yet. I'm just like,
You have to.
yeah, I'm
My
like,
daughter is 11 years old, and I see it now. She's, 5'4", 5'3". She's getting taller, and I see, when I'm walking around, I'm like, I'm looking at the guys, and I'm like, any of these sons of hey, me, I'm like, I'll fuck you up.
oh my
But I
God.
mean, it's just you have to start having. I have these conversations with my son all the time, and my daughter hears me doing all these and writing these articles and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, there are some people out there, and that's what I was telling my son today. I was like, at first I was pissed, but then I'm like, you know what? I'm like, buddy, you got to understand. Um, it's not, we don't live in this perfect world. I always see that, yeah, when we were kids, we used to be lost until 8 o'clock at night and our parents had no idea what was going on with us.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I live 20 minutes from DC and there's trafficking everywhere. And it's not just the trafficking, it's the predators.
Yeah.
There are predators out there. And it's just, and I don't care if you call it a disease or what, it's sick, it's evil.
Yeah.
Keep your hands off kids. If you can't, go get castrated or incarcerated or put yourself in somewhere.
Yeah.
And no matter what you say, nothing justifies pedophilia. Nothing.
Yeah. 100%. I completely agree. But I guess how how do I want to like wrap this up? We're like getting into 30 minutes.
I could talk a little bit longer. Hey, let's not wrap it up real quick. Let's talk
Oh,
about
go ahead.
this.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's talk
I
about
wasn't sure
this.
if you needed.
Nah, I could. It's Jess. We gotta talk. My Red
Okay.
Bull's circulating through my system right now.
Yeah. Oh, nice. A little Red Bull. No, but I really like your approach with that, and with the little dad like euphemisms. I just recorded last week with Scott Deluzio, and he enlisted after 9/11 happened, and he had heard that the army was hurting for numbers, and he had kind of said the same thing, like, hey, where are all these people that said that they were like, oh yeah, America, like, like, all right,
Uh-huh.
where are all the protectors? Where are all the people? Where are all the dads that are like, oh, if they lay one finger, like, I don't need a man to do that for me. I think we also need to teach our daughters, just our kids, period. Like, hey, if someone's bothering your friend, like, you stand up and you tell them, hey, leave my friend alone. Just something.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Certain things happen really quickly, but I don't know.
And believe them. Believe them.
Yeah.
Until they break your trust and you can't believe them, you have to second guess it.
Yeah.
Then still believe them.
Yeah.
Because they're your children and they're going to come up to you and they're going to tell you something that may not be the most comfortable thing. But if they don't feel like they can come forward, and this is way before anybody becomes a victim, the first person they're going to go to is the person they trust the most. And if you're the person they trust the most, they're the ones that they're going to come to you with the problems. And if you have to have open communication. These conversations don't necessarily have to be the most difficult conversation you have in the world. They could just be like, hey, you know what? Out there's people. They're going to look at your body. They're going to look at you, and they're not going to look at you like we look at you. And they're going to want to tell you things and do things they don't feel comfortable to you. And if somebody ever does touch you, whether that's a doctor or a professor or a teacher or a policeman or a firefighter or anybody in a position of power, then tell us about it. You can come forward and we'll talk to you about it.
Yeah.
Because the more, oh man, if you just Google child sex offenders or child sex or not child sex, don't Google that. Oh my God. But like child sex arrest, throw arrest in there and you see the type of people that they're arresting. It really are, I think I just wrote that article. I wrote an article about 2 weeks ago about, the predators hiding in plain sight. I think it's on townhall.com. If you just type in town hall and Piccolo.
Ooh, okay. I'll drop that link too. But I also think there's a website. I haven't checked it yet, but I should check it. I'm a little scared. You can see who's living near you if
Oh
anyone's a
gosh.
registered sex offender.
I have that Simply Safe thing and neighborhood, and they're always like pinging me like sex offender in your neighborhood. But it's not actually in my neighborhood. It's like 3 miles away. I'm like, oh my gosh, come on. It's like every other week.
Okay. Well, that's really awesome. I mean, I'm glad that there's some sort of tracker, but something. But yeah,
You know,
just
again,
self-awareness and having those hard discussions with your children. And I do want to add, sometimes it's not always like, hey, mom, dad, grandma, whoever, can I talk to you? Sometimes it's, hey, can we play? And children will start to open up.
yes.
I just recently, heard about this and like child play therapy, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes those difficult emotions and things in their memory will start to come out as they're playing, they're connecting with their parental unit. And
Mm-hmm.
I really love that, especially for
I do
children
too.
survivors who have been through a lot of bad stuff. Sometimes a direct confrontation can be difficult. So through that, you can get some really good insight on like your child's day, your like what's going on in your child's head, and to see, yeah, if your child is being manipulated or in a vulnerable position with anyone in their lives. So it's definitely having that conversation, and also using proper like terms and words for private parts and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Even I'm guilty of it too. Like,
Yeah. Like, I
calling.
get it. It can seem very aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, it's like it's a human anatomy. Um,
Yeah, don't desensitize it, because then it desensitizes to the kids too.
yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Great point. So,
Well, I'm glad you gave me the audience and glad gave me a little time to talk.
yeah, of course. Thank you for just, again, always sharing your knowledge and just, having a great dialogue with me. I always appreciate that, Jason.
Well, thank you, Jess.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything exciting going on with the rest of your week, or any upcoming projects or writings that you're
Well, you could find me every Thursday, 9:30 at night on Court TV, doing the crime time segment where we break down current cases, whether it's
Mm,
kidnappings, homicides, officer involved shootings, use of force,
mhm.
or even rescuing ducks. Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff. So check me out on Thursday nights, and also just check out the Protectors podcast. If you just go to the podcast, any podcast platform, type in the Protectors with Jason Piccolo, it'll
Mhm.
pop up.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Jason. I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, and good luck with your future projects and Court TV. And yeah, hopefully we'll have you back on soon.
Definitely. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. All right. Bye, Jason.